One of the hardest things as a pastor is when someone leaves your church, someone you love, someone you've walked with for a long time. So in this Word Made Digital tutorial, we're going to be talking about how to communicate with people who have left or who are leaving your church community. Hello, my friends. Welcome to Word Made Digital Tutorials. My name is Joanna LaFleur, and in this series of tutorials, we hope you check out more of them, we are trying to help you with communication. So much has changed in the digital world, and so much is changing all around us all the time in church land. And so we want to equip you to communicate the best news in the world as the best communicators in the world. And so thank you so much to Compassion Canada, who is making this tutorial possible. More on them later. Well, if you're watching this tutorial around the time we release it, you'll know that it's about to be Christmas. The Christmas season is often a time where people gather back to church, the church they grew up at or a church they haven't been at in a long time. So it's a great time of year to talk about what do we do with the reality of people who have left our church or are leaving our church, and how can we connect with them and communicate with them more effectively and, most importantly, more lovingly. There are a ton of reasons why people leave a church, and we're going to go through a few of those. But what I hope you'll see in this tutorial is that you can actually make a plan for each of these categories of leaving, and you can decide in advance how communication will look, broadly speaking, with those people. Because I think sometimes what happens is we are reactionary to these things, but we do know that people are going to leave, and they're going to leave for lots of different reasons: good reasons, bad reasons, neutral reasons. And so sometimes what happens is it is a feeling from other people like we've played favorites. It means like that person got a lot of attention when they left, and this other person, no one seemed to care when they left. And so if we can create some systems around communication, it's going to actually help people feel cared for, seen, and loved. We actually can pastor people better if we make a communications plan, as funny as that may sound. Reason number one, people may leave your church, and it's a big one during COVID, is that a lot of people have moved. Certainly in the last couple of years, there's been so much transition. People have moved halfway across the country in many places. And so in a lot of ways, the moving reason for leaving is kind of one of the easier ones. It can be super sad to see people leave, people you've loved and served with for a long time, but it's a happy reason. It's a bittersweet reason. And so what we want to do in this category is think about ways we can communicate with them both now and into the future. So number one, for example, let's make sure to thank them. It would be great if we can write it down in a card. Make sure to thank people who've been part of your church community, whether they've been donors or servers or not. They have been part of your family, however big or small their contribution has been. And thanking them for being part of the community can go a long way. The second thing I want you to think about in regards to people who are leaving town, who are physically moving away, is can you help connect them to another church? Part of the communication plan with this kind of a reason for leaving could be that you actually help them connect to some leaders, some pastors, some ministry opportunities in a new place. Maybe they even go with your love, with your blessing, with your enthusiasm to a church that you know and love in another town. A lot of people don't know where to go to church when they go to a new town, and so they're looking for recommendations. If you can help them, almost concierge them into their new place and give them a few top 2-3 places that they should check out to see if that's the kind of church that they want to go to, that can be an amazing way to bless people as they leave your church and to communicate with them that they are seen, that they are appreciated, that they are loved. And just because you're going to be now at a distance doesn't mean you have stopped caring for them. Another very obvious reason and a difficult reason that people leave is because of a disagreement, a conflict, an issue, whether that issue is personality and relational, or that issue actually might be a difference in theology. It might be a difference of views on a particular subject, or might be something to do with policies of the church or how money is spent. There's so many reasons under this category of why people might leave because they are upset or they disagree with something that's gone on in the church. This is This is a really tough one. I know for a lot of us as leaders and pastors, this one hurts. It can feel personal. Sometimes it is, in fact, quite personal. In terms of handling conflict and handling the leaving, I'm going to assume that your church has some systems and policies in place, whether with your deacons or elders, whoever that may be, with your pastoral team. You know, the Matthew 18, trying to reconcile, bring someone with you. If that doesn't work, bring a group with you. You know, there are things you probably already have in place for that. So I'm focusing in not so much on handling the conflict itself, but the communication around it. Number one, I do advise you to have things in writing. If things are conflicting, it's a good idea to have in writing instead of a he said, she said. If you can have some records of what's gone on, it helps when you do meet together or when things are brought up later, if it's appropriate or you're actually able to have a paper trail, whether that's, for the conversation as you try to work it out, or that's for reporting back to your board to make sure that things have been done well, or to learn for the future if things can't be reconciled. Make sure as much as you can, try to record what has gone on, whether that's keeping emails or that might be literally just after you have a meeting face to face, you might want to take a few notes to remember what happened to the best of your ability from your perspective. Of course, even in the best of intentions, a lot of conflicts, they can't be resolved. People leave and people are upset and people get hurt because we're all human and we hurt each other, we disagree, we don't see things the same way. So here's a communication thing that I want you to implement. Put something on your calendar. If you're the leader in the church, if you're a key member of the staff, mark in your calendar maybe something like 6 months, 1 year, and 2 years down the road. Mark in your calendar that you're going to check in with that person, whether that looks like an email, a phone call, a visit, whatever is appropriate for the context. Check in. Don't leave them hanging. Don't act like they were dead to you, that they don't exist anymore. To the best of your ability to live at peace, reach out. It makes a huge difference. It doesn't mean you're going to fix everything. It doesn't mean that the issues between you will be resolved. But if you can reach out, it makes a huge difference in them remembering again that you care, that you love them, and that you're praying for them. A third huge reason that people have left or are leaving your church or aren't around your church is because of things like illness. There's a huge community of people who are struggling and who are sick, and they wish they could be there, but they just can't get there. Physical, emotional, spiritual, mental, there's all kinds of reasons why someone might not be able to come to church. And so, to the best of our ability, we need to make a plan for what to do to help serve and love these people. One of the great things that came out of the pandemic lockdowns is that a lot of churches that were never online before began offering online services. And that's a great thing to connect with people in the community and the congregation as one step towards helping connect people who can't physically come to church because of sickness, illness, struggle, anxiety, whatever it may be. It gives people a way to still connect into the message, the people, the community, and feel a little bit a part of it, even if they can't come to the Sunday service, the weekend service. The next thing I want you to do with this group of people is think about ways you can communicate love, care, and support. A lot of this is going to be like showing up, bringing a meal, maybe going to them and serving communion to them, sitting with them, writing cards, maybe organizing a group of people to rally around them and support them in some way through their struggle and their sickness, resourcing them to medical care, psychological care, whatever it may be. There are ways that we can communicate our love practically and tangibly to this group of people who are no longer in our church and maybe would like to be there if it wasn't for this huge struggle. We need to communicate to people that they're not just good to us if they show up physically. They're not just good to us if they give money, that they're valuable, precious children of God, and they've been part of our community and they mean so much to us. But if we don't have a plan for how to think through how we communicate and express that deep, sincere thing that we feel, then it probably won't happen. Or actually even worse, it's going to happen in big ways for some person and in no ways for another. So one person will be getting lots of support and that's amazing, but another person will feel totally rejected because they know the other person got support and they didn't get any. So if we can have some plans, some systems, some policies in place, it ensures that people don't fall through the cracks. The fourth group that I want to mention today, people who have left your church or are leaving your church is this category of people that just simply feel disconnected. They feel like if I didn't show up again, no one would ever notice. And for some people, that is so sadly true. We may not even notice that they're gone. So if we can have systems in place, first of all, to not lose people in the first place, to make sure we have ways of tracking phone numbers, emails, contacts. As soon as people start to connect into our community, we can connect them into a reasonable way to get a database of their content and make sure that we keep every year asking people to update their contact information in the database. So if they move, if they change their phone number, their email, we want to make sure we still have their information. But more than that, it's that feeling that people have. A lot of people leave not because they aren't in your, it's nothing to do with the database. It's actually because they feel like they're not connected. So with the kind of person who doesn't feel connected, we want to help them feel connected. And this can look like, again, making decisions now, having some plans, decisions, policies, strategies in place for how we're going to communicate our desire to connect with them. And for some people, it might be things like they lost their ride to church. So they literally are disconnected from the way that they got here. So we can start to get this kind of information from people when we reach out, when we pick up the phone, when we send an email, when we send a card, whatever it can look like in your community. Have some decisions of how you're going to respond to that. Do you have a way of knowing if people haven't been here in a while? Do you have a way of tracking that? Is there some way that you have, whether that's through your small groups, through your database, through giving records, through name tags, whatever it may be? Make sure that the system in place doesn't allow people to fall through the cracks as easily, so that when people don't show up because they feel disconnected, you can then go into step 2 of the plan, which is we didn't want them to be disconnected in the first place, but if they are, you can go to step 2 of the plan and show love, care, concern. This is probably going to be really tangible. It's going to be invitation, and it's probably going to be maybe even multiple invitations before they come. But just as we said at the beginning of the video, if you're watching this when we release it, it's the Christmas season, and Christmas is an amazing time to reach out, to connect with people, and to show them you care. And this is why I'm so glad that this video is sponsored by Compassion Canada, because they're all about caring for people in Jesus' name. They don't want anyone to fall through the cracks, to be unnoticed, unseen, unloved, to not know the love of God. But here is a reality that's really staggering right now. 828 million people right now, today, and in the past year have been struggling with hunger. There is a crisis of global hunger in the world. And just for context, 828 million people, that's nearly 10% of the global population. Nearly 10% of the world has been struggling in this food crisis. And for that context, it's 46 million more than the year before. And when we hear these kind of numbers, we can feel like we don't know what to do. We don't have a system in place. But this is the good news. The Compassion local partners on the ground in these places around the world, they have the systems to connect, to communicate God's love to people, and we get to partner with them. This year's Gifts of Compassion gift guide, the thing that we do so often at Christmas, has gifts that are specifically targeted at meeting the needs of this global food crisis. I don't know if you've ever had to wonder how you were going to eat tomorrow or what you might feed your kids today because they haven't had anything. I can't imagine how disheartening, discouraging, and terrifying that may be for someone. But we have an opportunity to make a difference, to communicate love and hope in a tangible way, to meet hunger with hope. So I want you to go to compassion.ca/give to respond and to give a gift of compassion this holiday season. Well, as we think about this conversation we're having in the tutorial today, the idea of people leaving our church, how do we communicate the love of Christ, our love to them, making plans, systems, policies, strategies, procedures, so that people don't fall through the cracks, so that we make sure that we are doing consistently what we in our hearts want to do, but without a plan aren't going to do. This kind of communication is tough, and I don't want to end this video without encouraging you to grieve your losses. When people left the church that I was working at, it was personally painful. There are times maybe where you need to get some professional counsel and some maybe psychological support to help you walk through these uncomfortable grieved losses that you've gone through as a leader, especially in the last couple of years. I don't want to see more pastors have something like a root of pain, anger, or bitterness that prevents them from being able to love fully, in humility, considering others better than ourselves. And here's the good news. So many people are just waiting for an invitation or a re-invitation to come back to church. There are so many people in our communities who are struggling, who are lonely, who are hurt, and wondering if anyone even notices that they're around. And so I encourage you to keep inviting, to keep a soft heart, and to keep communicating the love of God in word and in deed. So let's do that together as we love people even as they may leave our churches. I hope this tutorial has been helpful for you. Can't wait to see you on the next one. Check out the whole series. We've got all kinds of other videos to support you as you communicate the best news in the world.